Wendy, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Aneta. I am thrilled and honored to be on your show with you.
I'm so excited to talk about the topic that we're going to talk about today because so many of my listeners and I am a mom and raising children. And one of the things that I always think about is I wish I knew when I was raising my children what I know today, because I
So
would
true.
have done things a little different. And so you have just created a business, a mission, a book that really focuses in on helping families create more peace, more connection. So, walk us through maybe a little bit of your background and your history of what caused you to say, I think I could be doing things a little bit differently. And then, how
Yeah.
did you decide that that's something that you wanted to share with others?
I'd love to share a little bit of my story. I would have never imagined that I was going to become a powerful parenting educator, family life coach. I graduated with a marketing degree. I was in corporate America for a long time, and I just didn't think I'd be here. But
Yeah.
when I went and had kids and I left my corporate career thinking that I was going to jump into stay at home mom life, thinking like, God, I should feel so blessed to be here. We were able to work it out so I could be a stay at home mom when my kids were really little. And I really thought this is going to be amazing. And it turned out it was really hard. And I joke about that season of life that I almost lost my mind. But I was blessed with a beautiful, strong willed little girl. The first few years, we could feel her strong will from birth, even literal birth. Thank God we're both here, but emergency C-section, we joke that Stella didn't want to come out. I was an absent birth. You don't meet a lot of people who were an absent birth. It means you weren't conscious when they were born. And it was just really rocky from the beginning. You could feel Stella just had this muscular, just strength about her personality, even as a baby. And
Mm.
the first few years were doable. I was working full time in corporate. We had a beautiful nanny that was like the world's best nanny. But then it did really fall apart once I was home full time with the kids. So I just had my second child and I just became so stressed out. And all day long, it felt like I was telling this little girl to do something and she would do the opposite. If I said, don't pull the dog's tail, she would pull it harder. If I said, go left, she would go right. If I said, don't touch the baby, she would shake him. And I just found myself in this pit of constant punishment cycles, trying to put her in timeout. I was reading all these books and asking everyone and their uncle, what do I do to like get this little girl under control? And it was so sad and heartbreaking what literally every single person told me. They basically, in a nutshell, it didn't matter if it was my boss, my neighbor, my parents, someone from church, just don't be afraid to show her who's boss. A lot of people recommended I hit her. My neighbor was like, just go on Amazon and buy this air quotes Christian book that'll teach you how to use a switch from the backyard to just smack her every time she misbehaves and that'll break her will. And really,
Mm.
the entire time I could feel this cognitive dissonance in me. But I tried some of those things for like a solid 6 months. And oh God, it got so bad to the point where Terry, my husband, would go to work every day and I'd literally look at him and be like, do you have to leave? Because I
Ah.
would look at my 3-year-old and be like, I don't know how I am going to survive the day with her because it felt that yucky. Like you'd see me at the grocery store and I'd put on a good face, but behind closed doors, I had become a yeller. I had become a not so gentle parent. I'd put her on the naughty spot real hard or maybe grab her wrist too tight. I started just becoming the shameful, irritated, frustrated mom. And at some point, I realized something's got to give here. This is not what I signed up for. This does not feel good and it's not working. And that's when we got invited to a free positive parenting class at her preschool. And the rest is history. We walked in those doors. We started to learn those concepts. This was 15 years ago now. That sweet, same little girl that has, thank God, because of this work, we've been able to build up her strong will instead of break it. And she's gone on to use that perfect God-given will to secure a Division I beach volleyball position at a top 10 school in the nation, which was something she really had to fight for as an undersized defender in the sport. But that strong will, it saw her through that. And now she's thriving. She heads off to college next year. And that is a feat that only less than 1% of high school athletes attain. So it's kind of wild to sit on the mountaintop now, so to speak, and see the fruition of all of these concepts and these strategies and these tactics that we teach our community in our book, in our podcast, in families and homes all across the world. But to see it like be this full circle moment where the little girl who really became my angel. She is the reason I evolved into who I am today. She is the reason why I dove deep into parenting education. She's the reason why I dove deep into life coaching and therapy and healed and released so many limiting beliefs that if it wasn't for Stella, I would have never realized that I was living with and operating as a human. So it's really fun. She graduates from high school this May. The book comes out on May 26th, Fresh Start Your Family, Powerful Parenting to Restore Peace in Your Home. And we have a thriving community, parents all over the world who are in our membership, a podcast that I love producing called the Fresh Start Family Show. So that's a little bit about my story and how I got here.
I want to talk about the book and the podcast, but I also want to go back to your story because I also had a C-section with my oldest and my youngest, but she also was a very strong-willed child. And I remember hearing the same things you heard, which is break the spirit. You need to show them who boss is, really get them to behave. And I remember feeling this can't be right. Why don't I have better resources? And it was scary also to feel like I don't know what I'm doing. I was a young mom in my 20s. And so I'm not sure. I don't know what I'm doing. So what were some of the things that you learned? You said it was a conference or
It was
like
a
a seminar?
class.
A class. Okay.
Her preschool for 30 years has been teaching this free positive parenting class. And it is the same body of work. It's all Draker's based psychology, a program that started out as redirecting children's behavior that I've now gone on to really build my own body of work around. But yeah, 30 years they've been offering this free class in our town to parents at that preschool. How amazing is that? And now I teach it, Aneta. Now, what a full circle moment. 4 years I studied under my teacher, who's now a grandma at 12, and now I do the class, and it's just so weird. But yeah, if it wasn't for them providing that, I would have never gotten into this work.
How long after you took the class and you started using the techniques with your daughter, did you start to notice changes in her behavior and also maybe in your own behavior too and how you were responding?
Great question. So it's a twofold answer. Some of it was like instant. So section 1 of the book, we teach parents the importance of paradigm shifting, and really like it is the biggest piece of what we teach, but it's also one of the hardest because it takes us out of the belief system that a misbehaving child equals a bad parent. That's like kind of the classic. Most of us inherit that. That's why if your kid melts down in the middle of the grocery store, if your teenager gives you an attitude at the Thanksgiving dinner table and your family's watching, you are going to feel more triggered than if it was just alone, right? Like it's because of the fishbowl effect. We think we have inherited this belief that if a kid has imperfect behavior, then it's something we're doing bad. So a bad kid, if they're misbehaving, they're bad. And that also means that you suck as a parent. So you better get yourself together or else you're failing. The new accurate psychology rooted belief is a misbehaving child equals a communicating child, equals an empowered parent who can redirect misbehavior with grace and dignity and firm kindness. And so in the beginning, when you change your paradigm and you start to see your children in a different light, like you kind of take the veil gets lifted almost, like kids feel that energetically. And I think that just creates such an energetic excitement that I remember starting to feel just more connected with my daughter just from that point. And the second answer to that is I was so excited to apply the concepts, and then they would blow up like a volcano. And that is because I had so much deeper inner work to do. And so it really was the beginning of the adventure. And again, we're 15 years deep now. It took me 8 years to stop yelling. It took me a while to stop being reactive. I mean, I've written some really vulnerable, humble articles, and I tell the stories in this book too. But I've written the stories that I get the most response from parents that are saying, thank you so much for saying this aloud, is I have written about the night I left bruises, the night I threw a book at my kid. Like I have some real reactive nervous system wiring in my family lineage. And boy, oh boy, has it taken commitment to shed that. And even now, 15 years into this work, I still have my moments. We always say in this work, there's no perfection. Your kids are never going to be perfect. You're never going to be perfect. I still lost it on my 15-year-old and yelled at him like probably 2 months ago. But thank God now I have the ability to make amends, take responsibility without
Yeah.
shame, which I think we might touch on that today of the importance of not living in shame. But it's now I have the tools to realize, like, wow, I'm still in the pattern. The nervous system is still reacting. It still feels like a bear is chasing me. And so there were so many things that worked really fast. And once I got them, it was like, wow, okay. When I replace punishment with compassionate discipline, it really works to change the behavior. And I tell so many stories in this book about real life situations where it's like, hey, here's an example of how scaring the crap out of your kid doesn't work. And then
Yeah.
here's an example of how using compassionate discipline to teach the missing life skill works. And then, yeah, modeling was a big thing. As soon as I learned and I got the memo that I could tell Stella to chill out all day long, 27 times a day. But until I modeled what it looked like to step to the side, do what we call a stop sign, regulate my own nervous system, and then
Yeah.
handle the challenge, she was never going to do it. And so a lot of it just really took the deeper work. And so that's what's cool about this body of work that I write about is the long-term results are insane. And you got to jump in and be ready for the adventure because it's not as easy. And really, I thought it was. I'd go to class, I'd come home and be like, great, today we're going to make calming kits and we're going to replace timeout with self-calming. And again, tell the story in the book is like the day that I put my finger in Stella's face and told her she needed to go get her calming kit and calm down. She stood at the top of the stairs, took the plastic calming kit that we had gotten from the dollar store thinking this is going to be this magical thing. She threw it down the stairs, little 4-year-old child, and it shattered everywhere. And then I lost my mind. Like that's a real life story of me
Yeah.
learning how to do it differently and then really hitting the hiccups. But thank God I didn't give up because to see an 18-year-old now that is so well versed in self-regulation when she gets triggered, when things don't go well on the volleyball court, or when friends and her have an argument or a disagreement, or she's triggered by something her best friend says, it just feels so cool to see the mini human develop the life skill that will take them through life instead of just having trained a mini human to submit to me because I'm the boss and I get to make them do what I want.
It is hard to be so vulnerable and to share. And I know as a parent, like I can look back with shame, as you said, so many instances where I'm like, gosh, what in the world was I thinking? And I think it's because, at the time, I didn't know how to regulate my nervous system. I was passed down parenting from my parents who definitely did not have the coping skills. And the kids pick up on it. I mean, the energy is felt. Also, even if we think that we're displaying calm, which most of the time we're not, the kids will know if we're not. So how far in the journey did you realize, oh, I need to figure something out for myself. I need to take better care of myself so that then I can model the behavior. I can be present in the way that I need to for my child. Like, how long was that?
Well, it was pretty fast because I had a teacher that was so bold with me. So I remember I was in these free workshops at my daughter's preschool for probably like 6 months. And I'd come into the classroom and I'd say, Susie, this is not working. I need you to come to my house so you can see how difficult my child is. And she would just hug me and look me in the eyes and say, you just need to get to Freedom to Be. Freedom to Be is a life coaching weekend intensive healing program that we now teach here at Fresh Start Family.
Mhm.
And we do it once a year here in San Diego. And she really went on to say, I would say, gosh, a whole weekend away. Like I have a baby and a toddler. I can't have my husband. Like that's too much to ask. And she'd be like, Wendy, she'd tell the whole class, look, you literally have no excuse not to go to this weekend deep healing program. She said, unless it's your child's birthday. And even if it's their birthday, she said, have their birthday party on a different weekend because this will be the biggest gift you ever give your children. And I
Yeah.
just remember she was so bold about it. And I was like, really? I was still on maternity leave and we had just gotten a bonus in my corporate job. And I was like, screw it. I'm doing it. I'm going to invest in the ticket for the weekend program. I invested in like a 4-pack of private session coaching with her. And I just jumped in with all my heart. And that weekend is really what changed the entire future trajectory of my life. So I spent that weekend looking at my blame patterns. But that weekend is the deepest healing work that we do. And we do our healing work through feeling. So we can't logically change our ways, so to speak. But when you feel to reduce blame and shame, it like cracks us open in the most beautiful way. So I worked that weekend on reducing blame because Stella was the number one person I blamed at that point in my life for causing me to be stressed out. I worked on fully forgiving myself and loving myself, which I had never done any work around. And when we do that, we then are able to fully love others and forgive others, but you can't do it until you do it yourself. I looked at my tone, the way I was unknowingly causing people in my life to not want to cooperate with me, specifically my daughter. And I worked on learning how to hold space during conflict, which I had never been taught, like really, truly holding space for somebody else, especially if they're complaining about you, which kids have a way of doing in different ways. It's not always like, Mom, you're mean. They will display and complain in different ways, but then also holding space for yourself when you've got those little voices telling you this will never work, or this kid's going to grow up to be a crazy entitled brat. The holding space exercise that weekend was just so pivotal. So after that initial weekend where I went deeper with my healing, that weekend is very similar to On-Site Weekend. They're like the big company here in America that does those type of experiential programs. But when I came home, it was wild. I was like all of a sudden not white knuckling the calming break. Like basic concept we teach here is to create space between the stimulus and the response. Viktor Frankl taught us about this, create the space. That's where our freedom to choose is. But many of us are like, cool. But then the trigger happens and you're like 0 to 60 reacting. But when I came home that Monday, I was, this is so weird. Something would happen. She'd shake the baby or something. And I was so easy for me to like step outside or take a deep breath or like signal safety. So the healing had actually worked. And for a few days, I modeled really easily what it looked like to slow myself down, regulate my nervous system, self-calm. And then surprise, surprise, it was like 3 days later, I write this story in the book. I heard Stella march down the stairs and she was taking these big breaths in our black chair that used to be out there. And I came around the corner. I'm like, what's going on, honey? She's like, I'm sitting here and I'm taking deep breaths. She was 4 at the time, taking deep breaths because Taryn did something in the playroom that was bugging her. And she decided she was going to come do this self-calming moment. And it was like, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, oh, wow, this works. Like I had been telling her for 6 months to chill out, Stella, relax. Your brother's little, blah, blah, blah. And she was just like not having it until I showed her. That's one of the earliest places where I was like, wow, this is working and I want more of it.
Oh my God, I love that. And it's amazing how we can think back to those moments. And I'm glad that you have those moments where it clicked, not just the moments where you're like, oh, I wish I'd done that differently, because we kind of have to go through that. When did you start coaching others? So you started doing this for yourself. You're raising your kids. And tell me about your son. Did he also trigger you, or was he easy second baby? Like a sweet kid?
He is my more mild child. So I refer to like Stella's got that beautiful, strong will, just very power driven, future leader, competitive as heck, giant justice button. If she thinks someone's cheating in a game, oh my God, she couldn't play Monopoly till she was at least 9 years old without freaking out. And then Taryn's got the beautiful, mild personality where he just is easygoing. He's so sensitive in his heart, but he's just not rocked by much. He's very even keeled. And I always say that this work helps all children. I have a tendency to really focus on the parents of the strong-willed kid because I think those are the ones that bring us to our knees the most. Those are usually the parents that walk in our doors and actually will do the work, because it just is like, it breaks your back. It feels like you're going to die. But the more mild children oftentimes, and this was our scenarios, they might just struggle more with inadequacy behaviors. That's one of the 4 categories of misbehavior we teach here. Separation anxiety. This was Taryn's story. Anxiety to some degree. Those were the areas that we got to use these same concepts and tools and a parenting system that was based in relationship and firm kindness to redirect him out of those behaviors. And then also, of course, being able to set the firm boundaries, but do it in ways that built him up being that like softer personality
Mhm.
was so important through the years. So he's 15 now, he's 6'2", and he's
Mhm.
thriving in life also. It's just so fun to see what a different personality he is. He's more of an attention kid with a tendency to have inadequacy here and there. Again, it shows up
Mhm.
with a little anxiety here and there. And then Stella is just lives in the power category most of her days. So we often say that a lot of kids, they will do all four categories in life, they will, but most of our kids have a tendency to hang out in one for most of their lives. And once you get to know more about the root causes of misbehavior and start to honor the uniqueness of your child and see that it's a blessing that they are wired that way, then you start again to be able to redirect the misbehavior that you don't want in ways that build them up instead of try to shame or force them into submission.
Well, I'm glad. What are the 4 types? You said that typically we spend time in 1 or 2. What are the 4?
Yes. So this is section 3 of the book, Root Causes of Misbehavior. And the 4 categories are attention. A parent's going to feel irritated and annoyed. This is like nails on a chalkboard feeling, or a kid in the back of a SUV doing like fart noises in his armpit while his sister is screaming, "Stop it, stop it, stop it." And he's back there giggling and laughing. That's annoying. Like, parents going to feel annoyed, irritated. Attention misbehavior. Attention misbehavior often has a root of a child wanting to feel unconditionally loved. Like they're trying to get that bucket met. So the need to feel loved bucket met. Next category is inadequacy or avoidance. We have a tendency to see less of, especially in our community where we really do a lot of focus with strong-willed kids. But again, saw it a ton with my little guy. Separation anxiety is a perfect example of inadequacy behavior. And they have a mistaken belief that I just can't. I cannot do it. So why even try? And then revenge misbehavior is a big one that drives parents up the wall and ends up just becoming a continuous cycle in a family system. And then surprise, surprise, we see this in the world too. Revenge, eye for an eye culture, and it is heartbreaking. But revenge misbehavior is obviously hitting, kicking, biting, throwing, saying, "I hate you, this family sucks, you're mean," whether it's verbal or physical, those are kind of what it looks like. And that misbehavior is all about the root cause of hurt. So most children don't understand their emotions because most of us parents weren't raised in a home where emotional literacy was a thing. But the
Mhm.
thing with revenge misbehavior is it does have a root cause of hurt. So this child that does this misbehavior has a mistaken belief that when I feel hurt, I must hurt back, often because that's what's been modeled to me. Punishment, for example, is a way that parents keep the cycle going. If a kid messes up, especially if they feel disrespected, a parent throws out punishment, like, "I'll show you." So we all have revenge
Yeah.
behaviors, but kids show up in one way, parents show up in another. And then the last category that we teach in the book is power struggle misbehavior. And this is when a kid pushes back, won't do what you want, says no. And this kiddo is simply seeking to feel powerful. Power, or the need to feel powerful, is a human healthy need. And kids that are strong willed or in a power surge stage of life, and really all kids, they just have a very strong need to feel powerful. And so they have a mistaken belief that in order to feel powerful, I must overpower others, often, again, because that's what's been modeled to me. So those are the behaviors that are just like you tell your kid to do something and they either say no or they just don't take action. They might stay
Mhm.
longer on their phone and you have to come in and you think lecturing or threatening is going to help when it actually makes things worse. So each one of those categories, we have specific redirection tools catered to the core need that we get to support our child to get that met in a healthy way, not an unhealthy way. And what I mean by that, Aneta, is a child who argues with their parent is getting their need to feel power need met. They're just
Mhm.
doing it in an unhealthy way. So
Right.
if I get you a rise out of you, if I get you to yell, if I get your attention like this, we call it a dance. And
Uh,
both parent and child get used to that. It's like a battle of the wills. And really, you don't even know what you're fighting about. It becomes all you care about is winning. And that is an example of like feeding this need to feel powerful bucket in a very unhealthy way. So we teach you how to do
mhm.
that differently. And also, most importantly, how to find power, true power as a parent that models to your children what it looks like to actually solve conflicts with integrity and connection.
Wow. How early can you see these behaviors or these patterns in your child?
So early. So let me think about this. So Stella would have been 18 months. I think the earliest is going to be like a baby who you go to change their diaper and they might have a sore bottom. And so they kick or something like, don't
Uh,
touch me. Like that's a
yeah,
perfect example of I feel hurt. That's actually an example of knee jerk protecting yourself.
yeah,
But sometimes you see it show up with older babies or say 18, 22-month olds who refuse to eat something if they are not feeling, or toddlers who you start to see power struggles happening over the potty training. Like that's a great example of a kid at that stage often will start to realize that they have power over their body. So if they are feeling pressured and overpowered, they will start to push back and they start to realize I can have power here. And then they might have accidents or have that kind of stuff. So it shows up
yeah,
really early. I think the earlier you can just get curious about it. And then the four needs, which is important to add to this, is the need to feel powerful, the need to belong, which is really one of the
mhm,
biggest ones, the need to feel valuable, and the need to feel loved. All human beings are going to be consistently trying to get those needs met on a daily basis. So the sooner you can start to look at, oh, what's happening in this moment when the kid's not doing what I want? Is there a need that I can feed in a healthy way that will lessen the misbehavior and the pushback? And or does this happen to fall in a certain category of one of these misbehaviors that I can use one of these specific strategies versus a band-aid tactic?
yeah,
Like every time your kid doesn't do what you want, they get a timeout. Most traditional parenting is just using the band aid tactics, and it might work in the moment to cause a child to submit. But again, the long term is not sustainable.
yeah. That makes sense. So the book is called Fresh Start Your Family: Powerful Parenting to Restore Peace in Your Home. Tell
Yeah.
me what your hope is with this book, Wendy.
Oh, my hope, Aneta, is that parents just get excited about how fun it is to take charge of your own family legacy and to get back in touch with the joy of why we had kids to begin with. We had kids so we could have this like fun little squad of connected humans who we feel this beautiful common bond of unconditional love, and to be able to raise good, kind, contributing members of society that we
Yeah,
have mutual respect and safety in our home. And I just think it's so honorable to be a parent that if you're not hitting the nail on the head with what you want and what you set out as a parent, that you're able to just raise your hand and be like, okay, I'm willing to look at some of these patterns I may have and make a fresh start and realize that what I inherited, we get to thank our parents for all the things they did great, and also acknowledge that there are things that we do not want to pass on. And so
yeah,
being a generational cycle breaker is such a beautiful, brave, dignified way of parenting that I just think becomes an adventure. And so I hope this book helps people feel less alone. I hope that it erases shame from them when they realize they are not the only one that has reactive tendencies or has shamed their kid a few times or isn't necessarily loving parenting. I think we also carry so much shame about that. When my little girl was young, I just was so ashamed. I just wasn't sure if I liked her. And I
mm,
just thought that that made me a bad person. So now I just say it aloud and it's like, oh, you're just in a thick season where
yeah.
parenting is tough. And when you invest in education and learning and healing, it just becomes so much joyful to do life with these little people that grow up to be big people.
Yeah. And I find that sometimes I know the people that we find most challenging, it could be your kid, could be your parents, could be whomever, they become our greatest spiritual teachers. And so, what has
Yep.
your daughter, Stella, taught you?
Aneta, you are so spot on. That is one of, I think, the most important truths of the world. There's a book called The Little Soul and the Sun. Have you ever read that, Aneta?
No.
You must get it for your library. It is so beautiful. This little soul wants to come down to earth and he wants to be this light of patience. He's like, I want to show up on earth as patience. And God's like, okay, cool. But to do that, you're going to need someone that'll test you. And he's like, but I don't get it. And his little buddy comes along and his buddy's like, I'll go, I'll go. He's like,
Uh-huh.
I'll go to earth with you and I will be someone who
Mm.
hurts you and triggers you.
Mm.
And then he just says to him, I'll do it for you, but you have to promise me that you'll always remember who I am, like who I
Oh.
actually am. And they skip off to go down to earth. And it's just a really great example of what you just said of it's not just woo woo made up stuff. Like it is factual. These human souls that test us and that trigger us, they really do call us into healing if we accept the invitation. So for Stella specifically, without her, I would have never been able to see humility as a strength. As Mother
Mm.
Teresa says, humility has the power to change the world. I would have never, I don't think, realized that, but I was invited into humbling myself and seeing my contribution to the dance. I think I would have remained in more of a victim mindset around so many things because I never would have learned to take responsibility for my contribution. As I say, we are often co-creating our lives with God, and
Mhm.
we have a big part of that. And so without Stella, I probably wouldn't have really dove into learning how to take responsibility, but in a way that doesn't beat myself up for it and doesn't shame
Yeah.
myself for it, but instead just be honest about my contribution and take off the blinders, so to speak. And I don't think that I would have been as compassionate as I am now and empathetic with other people. And really, I guess the biggest thing, and I shared this at the end of my deep healing weekend that I led a few weekends ago, but 15 years into this work because of Stella, I am like, I love myself so much. And it's not like a cocky, I'm the best way. It's like I genuinely am so in love with myself. And if we want to love our neighbors as ourselves, and if we want to love our enemies, it really does start with yourself. And many of
Mhm.
us who grew up in autocratic homes where there was punishment and shame just as part of the system, that inner critic voice is so strong once you grow up. And many of us develop perfectionist tendencies. And we think if we just do everything right, then we'll be loved and we'll be enough. And many of us have so many thoughts of we're either not enough or we're too much. And I've spent the last decade shedding those shame patterns. And now I can honestly say that I just love myself so much. Even on the days that I'm not perfect and I mess up, I'm able to give myself compassion. And from that place, it just really flows out to other human beings, especially my loved ones. And so for her, I thank her for that because she was the beginning to this whole journey that I went on. So I'm grateful.
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah, and I have to check that book out because I do believe that we're here in their lessons. And sometimes those closest to us, they help to be that teacher in ways that we don't always enjoy in the moment. But you look back and you think, wow, I absolutely had to go through it. Wendy, share with me how folks work with you. What are the other ways? You mentioned coaching. Tell me all the ways that folks could work with you. If they're listening and they're like, you know what, I need help. I don't need to do this on my own. What are the different programs that you have?
Yes, Aneta. So, first things first, if this happens to be airing before May 26th, pre orders, they help authors like myself so much. When you pre
Sure.
order from an author, basically the publisher is able to communicate to the big guys, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target, and then they place their stock orders. So it just really helps authors when you pre-order. freshstartfamilyonline.com/pre-order. And the coolest thing about pre-orders is you don't get charged until the ship date, which I will say is right around Mother's Day. So it's
Mhm.
just a really easy way to support someone. If you're hearing this episode and you're resonating with some of the things that I say, grab the book. We have lots of bonuses that we're offering that you can just drop in your order number on that pre-order page and we'll get you some great bonuses that are really going to help you apply what I teach you in the book. Instagram, I'm Fresh Start Wendy. And then I would say that if you happen to have a strong-willed kid and you want to come get in my classroom with me, then coming and learning with me I have like a 1 hour interactive workshop that is really helpful to learn the strategies of seeing strong-willed kids in a way that's really going to change how they cooperate and listen without needing that power over structure. And
Mhm.
that's freshstartfamilyonline.com/power bundle. And yeah, those are the big ways. Podcast is Fresh Start Family Show. And I'd say just get in the classroom with me, free workshop /power bundle, and then come pre-order the book. And that's the best place to start. I do have a certification program too, if you have any listeners that really are interested in actually gaining full mastery in this work and possibly becoming a certified coach in the Fresh Start Family approach. but that doesn't launch till September. So we'll keep it at that
Okay.
for today.
Well, we'll leave all those links. We'll make them available in the show notes.
Thank
And
you.
I love that, Wendy. And we'll definitely do our best then to get this out before. As an author to an author, of course, I know the pre orders are important and the book sounds amazing. I ask everyone a final question, which is what does it mean to you to live the width of your life?
I love that. So I think to live the width of your life means lately I've realized that you can't will your will. So it's like what has been put on your heart is purposeful. So developing the ability to listen to your intuition, which to me is like your intuition comes more from your lower body, your gut, and then divine guidance comes from above, and those two meet in the heart. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of people were conditioned to not listen to themselves. Too many people were raised in homes where emotions were taught as bad and dangerous and the heart being wicked, or like it's not safe to listen to yourself, or women are too emotional. And it just could not be farther from the truth in my own
Yeah.
experience. I believe that our desires and our intuitive callings are there for a reason. And the more you do the work to really lean into that, even if it feels crazy at times, like right now, I'm leaning into this 30-year goal that God's like, hey, remember you said you wanted to stand on Capitol Hill by the time you were 80 and end legal corporal punishment in America. Remember, it's still legal in 19 states in public school systems. And I'm like, really? But that's going to take me getting into, I don't even know, writing bills and working for a nonprofit. And it's like, yeah, that's what we're going to do for the next 30 years. And I'm like, okay, because you can't will your will. Your
Yeah.
calling is perfect for you. And so if you are feeling a calling to dive in or expand in a certain way, or maybe go down a route that might be very different than what you were doing in the past, I think that is living the width, is like really that deep breath that you fill your whole lungs and your lower back, and realizing that there's so much available, so much goodness that can be had when we just trust our inside, so to speak, our heart and our intuition. That's a really beautiful thing. So that's what I'm feeling today about living the width of our life.
I love that, Wendy. Thank you for the amazing work that you are doing in this world. So many people are struggling with the things that you talked about. And I think through your vulnerability and through sharing the things that you didn't know when you didn't know, and then by sharing the things that you learned that are helpful, you are changing the world. And as we break those
Mm.
cycles, as you mentioned before, when we break the cycles, then our kids do better and every generation is just a little bit more healed. So thank you for the amazing work you do.
I love that. Aneta, thank you for having me. This has been such a beautiful conversation. I am grateful.
Me too.